Johnny Kong.
Hey guys, so here's the deal. I'm dealing with a kidney stone and I just got over COVID 2 weeks ago and led right into these 2 kidney stones, actually, one very large, one smaller. Anyway, I don't sound great, but I wanted to make a video while I'm feeling kind of okay and maybe perhaps under the influence of some very good painkillers. I wanted to make this video and just talk about the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. Let's get started. So if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know that I love Marvel vs. Capcom and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I made a video talking about the terrible arcade 1-up MVC2 cabinet and how I made my own, and it played much better than the stock MVC2 cabinet from arcade 1-up. But it's never really felt great. There are some things about arcade 1-up controls that I had to update, and you're playing on a pretty terrible monitor in an arcade 1-up, regardless of what you get. The lag is I think it's like 24 milliseconds. It's not great, especially for a fighting game. So there are things that I always, even though I love it and I can play it and it's fine, I feel things in it that aren't great. So when this collection got announced, first I couldn't believe it. I had a reaction very similar to Maximilian Dude.
No Switch as one collection.
What?
Flash in XMen vs. Street Fighter.
Ah, what's up?
Duke it out in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, New Age of
What am I
Heroes.
fucking looking at?
Side scroller the
Go
Punisher.
back!
I never really thought that we would get these games released in an official capacity ever again. I don't think anybody did, to be completely honest. So it came out of nowhere. So of course it was going to be a day one buy for me. I had pre-ordered physical copies for PS4 and Switch, and then they decided that they were going to release it digitally much earlier. So it came out a couple of days ago, about 5 days ago, I think, on PS4 and Switch digitally. And I couldn't resist. I had to buy them digitally. So the cool thing about that is now I can keep my physical copy sealed if I want to. But anyway, I've been playing the hell out of them, and I just wanted to talk about the games, what they mean to me, how I discovered them, why they mean so much to me, and just kind of gush about them. So it's going to be a weird video, just a quick little short one, but I hope you guys enjoy it. So the first game that came out was X-Men Children of the Atom, and the first time that I remember seeing this game was probably way after it was released. I want to say it was 98, might have been 97, 98. I was a really little kid. I was born in 1992, and I remember being in elementary school really young, so probably 4 or 5 years old, and seeing this in an arcade. And I actually never played X-Men Children of the Atom. I watched people play it, but of course, it grabbed my attention because I was a big X-Men fan. I would read the comics as a kid because my uncle and actually his son, my cousin, they were both really into comics. So whenever I would go over there and stay, if I had to be babysat for the day or something, my cousin would usually be bringing me comic covers, even some that I really shouldn't have been looking at. There's this one Batman cover that comes to mind that still haunts my dreams, but nowadays I think it's cool. But that's how I got into the X-Men, and so I would see this game being played in the arcade, and it was always one of the cabinets that all the older kids were playing, and me being a little child, usually in there with my parents or a brother or, a family member or something, I wasn't going to walk up and be like, can I play? It was just watching, and that was enough for me, because I couldn't believe video games had crossed over with something from something else. Just back then, that kind of blew my brain. So I never played it, but I saw it, and now that I have played it, what do I think about it? Well, it's a great game, but it is hard. I mean, even if you crank the difficulty all the way down, this game is still pretty difficult. It's not because the AI is really good or anything. It's actually because it's really spammy, especially the final boss, Magneto. He will just fly up into the air and continuously spam projectiles and beams at you. It's pretty funny to observe, but it's not funny when you're fighting it in the moment. But it's just funny that's definitely a lingering effect of arcade games back then. They wanted to make them hard, so Magneto is going to spam the crap out of you to make you spend more quarters. It's pretty funny. Now, this next one I definitely remember playing in the arcades a lot, and that was Marvel Superheroes. So I remember, again, that same arcade. It was in the mall, literally 5 minutes from where I live. It was an arcade called Tilt, which I believe was a franchise arcade. I could be wrong. Could have just been a one-off, but it was a big arcade in my local mall, and I would walk in there usually looking for Mario. They had the old original Mario, but when I saw Marvel Superheroes and nobody was playing it, that was my first experience with it. The thing I will say about this, I think I did not see this game until after I played Marvel vs. Capcom, because the reason I played Marvel Superheroes was because I assumed it was a sequel to Marvel vs. Capcom, because I had played that before I played this. So I played this one years later. But, obviously it's just Marvel characters, but that didn't matter to me because I still was a huge fan of Spider-Man, so the fact that I could play as Spider-Man in it was enough for me. I remember getting my ass kicked in this one. I was not fit to be playing this game. I didn't understand the mechanics, and, Marvel vs. Capcom is a much different game than the earlier games. But I still had fun with it. I never got very far. I think I would get to like maybe round 3 before the CPU would just kick my ass, but this game's really fun because it has a unique aspect that was kind of brought back in some later Marvel games. I believe Infinite, with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, they kind of brought back the Infinity Gem things, not quite in the same way, but it's cool because you can use the Infinity Gems in this game to like power your character up, so you can get like super armor, or your character will move faster, or your attacks will do more damage. You can become invisible, just stuff like that. It's really cool. I really like this game a lot. I think this is where we first kind of start to see what the games will become, but it's still not quite there. The thing that I do like about this game, and now that I'm looking at it in the timeline of how they came out, Marvel Superheroes definitely improved over Children of the Atom, just in speed and in the controls feeling more fluid. And that's definitely why this is the game that if I was to tell somebody that wanted to play these games in order, I would say maybe start with Marvel Superheroes. Go back to Children of the Atom after you've experienced Marvel Superheroes, because that's kind of, to me, that's where these games really start to find their footing. Now, XMen vs. Street Fighter has kind of been the sleeper for me. I did play this a little bit back in the day, but I know this is going to sound weird, but like when I was much younger, I thought Street Fighter was overrated. I just didn't like Street Fighter that much. I'm a big Capcom fan, but basically all the way since as long as I can remember, I was, born in 92. I came up a little bit too late to really be impacted by Street Fighter. I understand what it did, but I just got tired of seeing it everywhere and seeing everybody play it and hearing everybody talk about it. But I still remember playing this one in the arcade. And the thing that I remember about this was at the time, I was more of a Marvel guy. I wasn't really much of a Capcom fan aside from Mega Man. Mega Man was my introduction into Capcom games, really. So Marvel, I knew more characters from. So I would always go into the arcade playing as Marvel characters in X-Men vs. Street Fighter. And the problem with that is, it's not like I spent all of my day in an arcade. I was a kid, so I was only playing when I was there. I couldn't play these games at home. I didn't have a Sega Saturn, or anything else that it came out on at home. So I was playing it in the arcade. So I would be playing like, I don't know, Rogue and Cyclops, and this other guy would come in with like Ryu and Ken and just kick my ass because they've been playing Street Fighter their entire lives, and now they can just play it in another game and torture the 8-year-old kid playing games with them. This was the first one in the series where you could switch out characters. Well, you had 2 characters. You could switch them out, but they also just automatically switched them out at the end if you got defeated. This was kind of the first crossover situation we started seeing to happen. This is also, I think, probably the best roster before we get to Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I think this one has the coolest characters in it. I mean, as far as X-Men go, we had Gambit, Juggernaut, Magneto, Cyclops, Wolverine, Sabretooth, Rogue, and Storm. My go-tos, as the ones you could actually play in the arcade from what I remember, my go-tos was always Gambit and Rogue. Obviously, they're 2 that go together. Now that I'm playing it in the collection, though, I'm having a lot of fun playing as Magneto. He's just a ton of fun, and I'm kind of used to him from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. He's a little OP, but you can say that about a few characters in these games. I never really like playing as the Street Fighter characters. It's just, they're too basic to me. I don't know what else to say, but I would say that this has kind of been the sleeper hit for me because I didn't get to play this game much as a kid, but I have a lot of like nostalgia for it. And I think it's the one that I've had the most fun with as far as finally discovering it and really playing it. And this is probably going to be one that I actually try to go online with eventually and enjoy some ranked and see how good I do with a 6-button game as opposed to a 4-button game that I've become so used to with MVC2. I don't have much to say about Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter. It's kind of more the same as X-Men versus Street Fighter, just you have a few more characters. Like you've got Spider-Man comes back, Omega Red, I think the Hulk. Yeah, the Hulk. A few new characters. There's also some really cool hidden characters. You know, when I play these older games, especially, you know, being that I'm absolutely terrible at them, I like to play the hidden characters in these earlier ones because I'm terrible at 6-button fighters other than like more modern ones, like Street Fighter 6. I'm used to the 4 buttons from playing so much Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but there's some really cool hidden characters in this one that I like playing as. Armored Spider-Man, Mephisto, Dark Sakura, just a lot of really cool, interesting stuff. I also always thought Shadow was cool, but he kind of sucks. He's like really slow and delayed. Looks really cool though. And then, of course, we get to Marvel vs. Capcom, Clash of the Superheroes. So I'll go into the story with this one a little bit. You know, like I said, Tilt was the arcade that I went to, and I remember walking in to Tilt that day, and I remember exactly where this cabinet was sitting in that room. And I just remember like being absolutely floored as I was walking in. That's a different character select screen, and I'm just sitting there looking at it, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing in that moment. I was watching these two people play, and I saw Mega Man as a character, and like I couldn't confirm that it was him. I was like, oh, maybe it's just somebody that looks like him, but I still want to play it because it looks like Mega Man. You know, I'd never seen Mega Man in like a high graphic fidelity like that. I was used to seeing little 8-bit sprite and the terrible art on the Mega Man 2 cartridge. So when the guy playing chose Mega Man, and within the first 10 seconds of the round pulled out the Hyper Mega Man big combo, the hyper move, I could not believe what I was seeing. I lost my mind. I had to play this game. I begged my mom for quarters. She let me play it. I played it. The kids that were sitting there playing it, they were like watching me. I think they kind of knew that, you know, I was a kid, and you know, arcades can be a kind of rough place, but I remember these two older guys, they were probably teenagers, but they both kind of saw me and like they heard me talking to my mom and how much I love Mega Man. And so they wrapped up their round, and like the guy that won, he stayed and he, you know, put his quarters on the table, and I just put in mine, and he knew that I was a kid, and he was going to beat me regardless. He wasn't going to waste his quarters, but he did let me play. He let me pick Mega Man. He let me play, and he was obviously letting me get some hits in on him and just enjoy the game for a second before he kicks my ass. But I'll always remember that because it's kind of how I play the games now. If I play against somebody online, it happened last night. I played against this guy, and I was like, oh, he's not really doing very well. Maybe he's new. And sure enough, it was his first online match after we closed. He got his first 10 points. And I was like, oh, I feel bad now. So I picked some really bad characters, and I let him, you know, kind of play around and beat me. You know, just, you want to have a good experience, right? And you want new players to come in and enjoy it. So I'll always remember that as like a really cool thing that a fellow gamer did for me to let me discover something that I have literally loved every moment of my life since then. The other cool thing about this, and I'm sure this wasn't the same day, the same trip, but you know, I would go to this arcade more and more with my parents anytime they went to the mall for shopping for holidays or birthdays or whatever. I would have to stop at the arcade and at least play a little bit of Marvel vs. Capcom while they were shopping. You know, back then you could do that with your kid. You could let them be in an arcade while they were shopping. But I remember this one day I didn't go into the arcade, but my mom took me into KB Toys. Can't remember why. I don't think I had any sort of gift or, you know, any birthday coming up that I should get, you know, a present for, but I was just walking through. I think she was like trying to buy me like a video game for getting like an AB report card or something dumb like that. But I was just walking through, and I couldn't believe what I saw. I saw an entire little shelf in the middle of the store dedicated to Marvel vs. Capcom toys. So they had like 2 characters with accessories in them. And the one, of course, that caught my eye, you know, out of all of them was Mega Man, and it came with War Machine. So it was Mega Man and War Machine. And Mega Man had the accessories to like shoot, and he had the hyper armor, and War Machine had his little missiles, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing because, again, it's not something you're used to seeing at that point in time, you know, video game toys, but this was specifically a Marvel vs. Capcom toy set. And I immediately bought it. I still own my little Mega Man figure. He is in pieces, and the paint is all chipped off of him. My reason for him being in pieces is that I intend to repaint him someday. But I still have him, my original Mega Man Marvel vs. Capcom toy, and I absolutely love it. And it's one of those things that I'll always remember. I'll always remember walking into that store and seeing that and just having my mind blown that video games had crossed over into the mainstream again, and now we had toys. It was so cool to me. So then, years later, for me, it was probably 2001, 2002. I remember going into this same arcade where I would play Marvel vs. Capcom, looking for the Marvel vs. Capcom 1 cabinet, and it wasn't there anymore. And I was like destroyed. I was like, where'd it go? Like, what happened? Like, where is it? And I remember asking around because, they had like little staff members walking around you could get quarters from or whatever. And I was like, where's Marvel vs. Capcom? And he's like, oh, we got rid of it. And I was like, oh my God, why would you get rid of that? Like, people are always playing that. Like, I was like, man, like, no. He's like, yeah, we have the new one. And I was like, new one? What do you mean the new one? Because back then, no idea when games were coming out. And he's like, yeah, this one over here. And it was Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And it was this big, it had to be a conversion cabinet, but it was huge compared to the Marvel vs. Capcom 1 cabinet. And it had like a crappy marquee installed. I remember like the marquee was too small for the actual holder they had at the top, and like the buttons were obviously used from like another machine, but it was Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and I could not believe what I was seeing because I was seeing all these new characters on the demo that I hadn't seen before. And then I put in my quarters and started playing, and I could not believe how many characters I was looking at on the screen. So many that I couldn't find Mega Man. I didn't know if he was there or not. And he was. I did eventually find him, and God, I remember my first round, I believe I played as, it was Mega Man, Shumagorath, and Amingo. And that game truly opened up my eyes to like where games were going, because I remember seeing the backgrounds for the first time. I was not one of the people that paid attention to the music that much back then, so the jazz didn't bother me. But the game, seeing that like we had 3D backgrounds and like these sprites and like just the sheer amount of characters, I think, is what made this game have so much appeal. You can have a good fighter, you can have good mechanics, you can have a popular franchise, but I really think the thing that makes Marvel vs. Capcom 2 truly unmatched forever and all time is going to be its roster. You just can't beat a roster of 56 characters. I mean, it's insane. And they don't always look the best because they were just ripping sprites from all the previous games and they had a couple of new ones in there, but like that's kind of the charm of it, right? Like you have like original Darkstalkers Morgan with like a brand new sprite for like, I don't know, Abyss, or like just some of them have really thick black outlines and look like they're from a comic, whereas others are more subdued and don't have outlines and look a little more realistic. It's part of the charm though, because it's a crossover game, so it kind of gets your mind going like, oh, well, I guess yeah, if Mega Man came out of like a video game and like he was a sprite and then he was fighting somebody who's in the quote unquote real world, like Gambit or Ryu, obviously he's going to look a little more cartoony than the real human guy. So it was just part of the charm of thinking of like, wow, like if this was to happen and they were to cross over, like would they come over as their original forms and look all cartoony in the real world? It was just something for your imagination to explore. And I really think that's the charm of Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It also helps that the game is so incredibly bright, colorful, chaotic, loud, fast, aggressive. There are so many combos you can do, so many different things you can do with delayed hyper combos, your assists really make or break games. And just, I mean, somebody do the math for me, but you have 56 characters, you have teams of 3, and out of those 3 teams, you also get to pick out of 3 more assists. That's like an insane number of choices and outcomes you can have for just the same team, let alone the entire roster. And it's why I think Marvel vs. Capcom 2 continues to evolve and continues to be played, and why still to this day it's one of the staples of competitive fighting games, and why the community loves it and respects it so much. So yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts on this collection. The games in it are all great. I didn't talk about Punisher. Punisher's fun. It's a beat 'em up. The Punisher himself makes an absolutely hilarious sound when you use his special move. It's a beat 'em up. It's fun, but yeah, the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. I give this easy 10 out of 10. I love this game. I'm going to be playing it for a long time. I already got the Platinum Trophy. I was one of the first 0.3% to get the Platinum Trophy on PS4. And now I'm playing online ranked on PS4, and I'm working through the game on Switch as well. So I am literally basically platinuming it again on the Switch, even though there's no trophies. I'm going to do everything in that version too. It's a great collection. All of the games are fun. I have nothing bad to say about this collection. Honestly, it's probably the new best way to play these games, and I am going to probably get crucified for saying this, but I honestly think the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 version in this, it stands up to the Dreamcast version. It really does. I would argue that it almost looks better than the Dreamcast version just because of the scan lines that are implemented. That's something I needed to talk about. Scan lines for all of the games that they incorporated, you can turn them off if you want to, but it's the first collection where I've used the scan lines because they actually look good. The ones I gravitate towards are Type C and Type D. They really give you that kind of arcade monitor CRT look, especially on an OLED screen. Type D filter looks amazing for all of these games. It really does add to the look of the game, the feel of the game, but what I really like about it is for Marvel vs. Capcom 2, that Type D filter makes those backgrounds and the sprites look so good together. Like, it looks better than the Dreamcast version on a CRT to me, I'll be completely honest. And the scan lines for all of the games, they rival my RetroTink 4K. Like, if I plug in these games on original hardware into my RetroTink 4K and out to my 4K TV, it doesn't look as good as it does in this collection. It beats out the 4K. So there's a case for these simulated CRT scan lines being made for Capcom finally. They've done terrible filters in the past on a lot of their collections, but these ones, they knocked it out of the park. So yeah, that's everything I have to say. Get this collection if you're at all interested in these games. The artwork museum and the soundtrack alone would honestly be worth the $50 to me, and if they ever release an art book, I'm absolutely buying it. You should support these games in any way you can. It's a ton of fun, and I'm sure that eventually it's going to go on sale a couple of months, maybe a year down the road, and it'll just be an even better value. It's only a $50 game. It's already out digitally on Switch and PS4. I believe that the physical copies are coming in November, I think. It was October or November. I think it's November 12th, but I could be wrong on that. I'm not paying attention to it anymore now because I'm playing them anyway, so it doesn't make a difference to me. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. I did my best to just do a little chat thing here with gameplay. I'm not feeling super great. I don't sound great. And I'm in immense pain. Yeah, kidney stones are probably the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. Do not recommend. Have a good day, guys, and I will see you guys soon. Thank you so much for the support.